This is Tyler, your antisocial critic and the host of the AntiSocial Network, your number one source for anachronistic conversations online. Come join us each week to hear opinions from some of the best voices discussing entertainment, politics, religion, and modern life on the internet today, most of which you've never heard of, but I have. This week we're joined by three of our friends from, Christian film Twitter for the best films of the year discussion. We all brought our, tentative 10 best films of the year, albeit this is as of December 29th, so I'm sure things will shift around in the coming month as late revival films kind of start jumping in, because, as of the time of recording, I don't think Tragedy of Macbeth or Licorice Pizza or a couple of the Oscar films have gotten wide releases yet. So I'm sure we all have different opinions. I guess everyone just kind of, want to introduce yourselves and say what's going on, I'm sure we've all had you on before, but just kind of say hi, everyone introduce yourself real quick. Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Lindsey Dunn, and my movie name is One of My Stories, and I'm in the North Carolina Film Critics Association, and I'm glad to be back on your podcast, Tyler.
Well, considering how tense our last discussion was, I'm glad you feel welcome back here. So, all right, Sarah or Trevor, you want to say hi?
I'm Sarah Hargett, and my blog is How to Watch a Motion Picture, and I'm just a movie fan.
I'm Trevor. I'm on Twitter and Letterboxd as BookStoreThor, and I write reviews for The Banner, but those tend to be very short and sanitized. So, yeah, I don't have a blog. I just throw random stuff up on Letterboxd and Twitter threads.
So I guess let's kind of get started out. What was 2021 like as a year for film for you guys? 2020, it was COVID year, so everything kind of felt, crunched and there wasn't a lot of variety to work through, so people kind of had to get desperate with their movie selections. Like, what did this year feel like for you guys?
It was bad.
It was a rough year.
It was worse than 2020, in my opinion. But maybe I just haven't seen the good ones yet.
You're gonna go that it's that bad in your eyes?
I mean, I don't even have one 5-star movie.
Oh man. What about you?
I felt like there was a lot to keep up with this year because you had the movies that were supposed to come out last year that got pushed back, and then it was really hard to keep up. This is only my second year participating in four-year consideration season, so it felt almost like there were twice as many movies to watch as from last year. But you're right, like if you maybe weren't going to the theaters as much, it was more likely there were a lot of independent movies that came out that maybe didn't come to everybody's theaters, so it was hard to keep up with that. And then there were some like flagship movies that everybody saw, bigger pictures. But I found it to be a lot to try to keep up with. So hopefully maybe next year it will even out.
There were twice as many movies as previous years and half as many that looked interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to be the contrarian on this podcast. I thought this year was thoroughly interesting, at least in terms of the kinds of films we got. If only just because we had so many huge names behind a lot of these films. I mean, we got a Denis Villeneuve film, we got a Wes Anderson film, we got two Ridley Scott films, a Spielberg film, Del Toro, Edgar Wright, we get the Daily Wire's first film. Like, there was a pretty decent, selection of big stuff, and I thought some of the big blockbusters were at least passable. I mean, Quiet Place Part 2 and The Suicide Squad, and some of the later Marvel movies, Shang-Chi and Spider-Man were pretty good. So overall, I thought that I was just having a lot of fun at the theaters this year. Although I don't think we ever hit quite the highs we hit, pre-COVID, where it did feel like we were getting at least one really, really great film a year. So it was kind of hard to summarize this year, but just as a pure going back to the movies experience, I was having a lot more fun this year than previous year when I think the only movies that came out were Tenet and Sonic the Hedgehog. So we kind of had so at least the visceral side of it was a little more fun. I don't know if you guys would agree though.
Yeah, no, I thought there was a lot of movies that I went to the theater a lot this last year, so I don't think I was saying that there weren't a lot. Sarah and Trevor definitely are. I know they had a hard time finding 10 movies for their list.
So this time, me and Lindsey are going to play the optimists, and as opposed.
Oh, I'm always the pessimist.
Heyo. So I guess we might as well jump into the top 10 lists for all of us. So we all brought our lists. I'm curious how this is going to go down, considering half of us liked the year and half of us didn't. Does anyone want to volunteer their body to science and go first, or?
I guess I will.
All right.
All right, I'm going to start at 10 and go down, up.
Go up, yeah.
Yeah. All right, at number 10, I have Free Guy. And this is the first movie I saw back in the theaters. So I feel like it was enhanced by the theater experience. But it's, I thought it was funny, but I don't really remember what was funny about it anymore. So it was kind of like one of those fun, kind of forgettable movies. I definitely liked the real world side of it a lot. The stuff with Steve from Stranger Things and everything. That was cute. But otherwise, it was just a fun kind of Ryan Reynolds movie, basically. Did y'all see that?
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah, I saw it. I agree, it was really a fun experience, and it ended up, beyond being just fun, it had this really heartwarming, friendship / possible love, romance that happens, and just filmed like a video game. It just it was a perfect summer movie. It was very, just a lively thing that was a crowd pleaser. A lot of people would enjoy it. It wasn't going to be a divisive film that people would be arguing about.
Yeah, that was definitely a good feel about it. I liked the message too, the make friends in real life message. Yeah. So my number 9 is actually the same message, and it's Ron's Gone Wrong, the animated one. There's a kid who, there's these robots that are Facebook or Twitter or your phone, but they're have a personality, and there's this one kid that doesn't have it, and then finally he gets one, but it's faulty, and so it doesn't do what he says, and it doesn't like everything that he likes, and he learns throughout the movie to how to connect with people on a real level instead of just based on follows and likes and common interests. So I thought that was really cute. But the movie itself was kind of normal for an animated movie, but in a good way. I don't know how to describe it. It was just classically fun as an animated movie.
Didn't see that one.
Am I the only person who saw that one?
I didn't see a lot of animated movies this year, actually. Whatever reason, they all just kind of, everything past Soul last year just kind of just passed by me without drawing much attention. Maybe I'm becoming old. I don't know.
I still love animated movies. I always am why don't they make it more for me instead of for kids? And then I'm oh right, because it's a kids movie.
Spider-Verse looks cool. The new Spider-Verse trailer.
There's
a new trailer?
Well, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, but yeah, they revealed it.
All right.
Well, wait a second. So that Sarah doesn't have to just keep talking into a vacuum, should we all do our number 10 and 9 and kind of, roundhouse it?
We can go chronological for all of our lists. I think that way it's not super confusing.
Okay, you want us to just do one at a time then?
Yeah, otherwise we'd be just jumping all over the place. That's how my editors at Geeks Under Grace do it that way, and it's not a terrible idea, but it's kind of hard to keep track of everyone individually when everyone's just jumping between films.
Okay. But if one movie's mentioned that other people have on their top 10, you were saying that people could talk about it then instead of having a discussion about it later too?
If a film comes up and you've seen it, we can talk about it then, or you can talk about it when it shows up on your list. It really just kind of depends on where the momentum is. There's no hard and fast rules to this. It's just kind of our opinions.
Well, I think y'all seen this one. A Quiet Place 2 was my number 8. And I didn't actually like it that much when I was watching it. But then I ended up giving it 3 stars. And I was like, I'm going to just have to go back and hate it later because I feel like I like it, but I didn't like it. And then I went back and watched it again, and now I still like it, so I don't know what's wrong with me.
That's actually my number 3.
Oh, wow.
It's definitely a stressful experience. It's not necessarily the most fun I had in theaters this year, but it's very good.
I went with my friend, and he made fun of me because I said, let's go see A Quiet Place Part 2, and we'll see it in Dolby. And he was like, why are we seeing A Quiet Place in Dolby when it's quiet? And I'm like, but they use sound in creative ways.
I just thought it was disappointing in comparison to the first one, and I guess I just liked the first one a lot more. But I did like Cillian Murphy being in it. I'm a big fan of Cillian Murphy.
There's a John Krasinski-sized hole in that film that you can't fill with Cillian Murphy, but he did work really hard to try to fill that hole.
I don't know. I didn't really miss it. But I did miss, I felt like the plot line with Emily Blunt and Noah Jupe in it was completely pointless. They could have cut that out and added more to the Cillian and Millicent side, and it would have been a much more interesting movie because I felt like they breezed through a lot of stuff, like the weird wild people on the bridge and stuff. I was like, what is all this? I want to know more about that instead of have her go all the way over there just to get a can of oxygen. It's kind of okay, kind of hard.
Plus, it was kind of silly how the Noah Jupe character just kept making dumb decisions for the purposes of driving up tension, but it was still a fun movie. It was like a thriller, that suspense and all that.
Yeah, it still had that's I guess because Krasinski was still directing it, it still had that same kind of feel. The whatever was appealing about the first one is still there, but the writing was on a lesser level because it wasn't an original script anymore. I guess that's how I view it. I guess.
I'm not looking.
The first one set such a high bar.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to the third one when they're not going to have Krasinski back.
Oh. Okay, so number 7 is The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt. Did any of y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this was one of the first movies I saw this year, so it's kind of faded in my memory, but I just basically remember it being a really classic blockbuster feel, and Chris Pratt is just playing himself, and he's producing this movie that is just catered to being a Chris Pratt movie, so I just got a real kick out of it. And I really liked the third act. I don't remember now what happened in it, but I remember liking it a lot.
It didn't make my top 10, but yeah, I really did like it.
Yeah, I remember it had really good stunts, and I liked the whole concept of them bringing back normal, non-heroic people to fight as soldiers, because that felt very realistic that if you know, I mean, not that it was a realistic movie, but if something happens, we're all not going to be stacked like Chris Pratt. You know, it's going to be and you know, there's the book World War Z. Like, if not the movie, but if you read the book, it kind of talks about how the people that became heroes were not the people that sat at desks, but they were the scientists and the people that had the survival skills. And it just felt like a realistic way to play it, instead of it all being about brawn or, you know, holding the biggest gun.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I thought that Tomorrow War really felt like a 90s throwback with today's technology to back up the special effects. So in that regard, I really enjoyed it.
I'd love to see the 90s version of this by, like, you know, Paul W.S. Anderson when he was fresh off of Soldier or something like that.
That was fun. All right, number 6 is Land with Robin Wright. I just saw that like yesterday, and I was like, yes, I finally found a new movie that I liked. I thought it was just like, you know, really relaxing and beautiful to look at, and she did a really good performance, and her directing was good too. But I didn't think that the writing was like really top notch. It was like a basic story and a really good character arc, but just not like the kind of oomph that would make it like a really great movie. It was just kind of like a nice, good movie that I really enjoyed.
I really liked that when I saw it back. I saw it back in February when it was still in theaters, and it was a very, you know, it didn't surprise me that it didn't really fill out the theaters all that much. It's a very, you know, it feels like an indie drama. It feels like someone, you know, this is my directorial chops, but you know, as far as that goes, I kind of appreciate it more than of how far it reminds me a little bit like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant. Of this is how far I will go to make this movie. Kind of got that attitude. I will go into the middle of the woods and grow things to make this movie. Although she didn't need a fish though, but overall pretty good. Did anyone else see it?
Yeah, I saw it at Sundance, and I liked it. I guess for me, it felt kind of like a retread of Into the Wild or the movie Wild. It kind of was hitting those same beats, so I wasn't sure what the message was the director wanted to say that wasn't already made in those movies. It just felt like a very similar story. Now, granted, one of them ends with somebody dying, you know, spoilers, but but the idea of like going out and trying to get in touch with yourself and let go of something, it just felt very repetitive of things we've seen before. But it wasn't a badly made movie, and the performance was good, and I remember getting sucked into the story at the time when I was watching it.
There's something very 2020 about a movie where you go off into a cabin in the middle of nowhere and forsake the rest of society just for your own improvements. So.
Don't do that. Eventually, you have to go back.
I don't know. I mean, we live in a society, and we know how that's going.
Yeah. All right, number 5 is Little Fish. Did anyone see that? I think it's a 2020 movie on Letterboxd. So. It's with Olivia Cooke, who's one of my favorite actresses, and Jack O'Connell. And they're like, there's a pandemic where you lose your memory, and they're like a married couple who are trying to figure out how to stay together in the eventuality that one of them gets it. And like, it was just very interesting. Although there was some like weird like COVID was like put into it somehow, even though it doesn't apply. Like they were like wearing masks at one point, even though it's not transmissible. So I was like, what's going on? Why are they making it like COVID? But it was just very interesting. Like the characters playing off of each other. It was just like a lot of conversations, and it was I guess their chemistry was good, and it was just really interesting to watch them like navigate. And then it had a really Well, I predicted exactly how it was going to end from the very beginning, but I still really enjoyed watching it get there.
So was it a comedy or was it
very drama? It was very it was really good at doing emotions for me, because I don't like emotions to be pushed onto me, but they did it in it was the characters are very emotional, but they just kind of draw you in instead of try to hammer you over the head with it. And number 4 is Old Henry with Tim Blake Nelson, who's awesome. And it was just a classic Western. But
I've heard that it's a John Wick Western.
Well, I guess a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
a little bit?
It reminded me, me and my dad watched it, and right afterwards we had to watch True Grit, because it just made us want to watch True Grit.
Buster
So it was that kind of Western.
John Wick.
Yeah. But it was just, a really good cinematography. It was the kind of suspense that just makes you relaxed, you know what I'm talking about? Where you're just suspense, and you're just waiting for the action to start, And the Tim Blake Nelson's performance was so good, and his son annoyed me a lot, and he didn't change enough at the end. But what else? The ending. Well, it had a really cool twist to it that I won't spoil. But then after that, it didn't really land the ending. It landed the twist, but then the ending kind of felt like it middled off a little bit. But overall, it was just a really enjoyable movie to watch.
I'm hearing a theme, Sarah. You like things that help you to relax.
Yeah, I guess I have one on here that was not relaxing. So. But yeah, I do like that. Because I like noir movies because they put me to sleep.
My dad used to do that with Fight Club for some reason. So that movie made him go to sleep no matter what he did. So
what movie?
Fight Club.
Fight Club. Minority Report fixes my dad's headaches. He watches it every time he gets a headache.
Which one?
Minority Report.
Yeah, somebody was just saying their Christmas. They're watching these Christmas movies, Die Hard and Children of Men. I'm like, what? I mean, Die Hard, I've heard Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but not Children of Men.
That's an interesting Christmas movie.
The epistemology of Christmas movies is really getting loose nowadays. I mean, everything is just a Christmas movie now. Thanks, Laurel. Literally everything is. Lord of the Rings is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, that's what Matt said.
Gosh friggin' dang.
All right, number 3 is Cosmo Ball. And it is a Russian kids movie. It is really awesome.
Never heard of this movie.
I love it so much. I didn't even know it was a 2021 movie when I saw it. So it was just one of those. I love Russian movies. I don't know why, but they make me so happy. And this movie is about this world where there's this villain that's trapped underground, and he makes these orbs of energy and shoots them up into the air to attack people. And there's people who can teleport, and only people who can teleport can kick them, and then they're disintegrated if they kick them 4 times. So they make a sport out of it and save the world with a sport. It's so weird. It's hilarious. I love it. There's it reminds me of Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, but Russian. It's Tron a little bit too.
It has 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb.
Well, they're wrong.
They usually are.
We don't trust we don't stand the consumer the what are they the Metacritic the accumulated ratings in this house.
Trevor's being our librarian. He's looking up stuff.
I can't help it.
I mean, it is very, you can tell it's on a set, and you can tell there's full-on CGI characters that you're just well, that looks like a video game. But it has, it's very bright and colorful, And that's what I kind of like that about Russian movies. They're always like really beautiful to look at, even when they're cheaper made. So I don't know. Like you can tell that it's not like super great quality wise, but I just like really enjoy it, you know.
Did you see that Stalingrad movie from a few years ago?
Say again?
Did you see the Stalingrad movie from a few years ago? Stalingrad. There was a Russian war movie from a few years ago that's supposed to be like hilariously patriotic, and I've been meaning to watch it for years, but Russian blockbusters were never particularly on my very high on my to-do list. So, but I've been meaning to watch it because it's supposed to be like one of the weirdest like war epics of the 2010s, because it's like this insanely over-the-top patriotic action movie about one of the bloodiest battles of World War II.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite movies last year, so.
Trevor, we need your scientific analysis. Is Stalingrad positively reviewed or not?
I haven't heard of it. Let's see.
We trust the science, and IMDb will tell us if it's good or not.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's the 2013 Stalingrad, not the 1993. Got too many tabs. 5.6.
So it's slightly higher reviewed than Cosmoball.
Yes.
All right, moving along. Number 2. I just saw this last night, and I'm so glad that I finally saw something else that was good. Something else that was really good this year. Flashback with Dylan O'Brien. And I was not expecting this movie to be good. It's like a drug trip movie, and I was like, I've been meaning to watch it for a little while, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll just sneak this one in there. And it was like shockingly good. It was frightening. Like, I'm not good with horror, so I get scared easily, but this is not like horror. It was like a mentally scary movie or something. I can't even really like describe why, but it really like freaked me out while I was watching it alone at 2:00 in the morning. Let's see. I don't even know. It's like this guy is like in this like normal life that he's not quite satisfied with, and then he like meets this person on the street that like sparks a memory of a girl that he knew in high school, and he like is trying to like track her down and figure out where she went, because it seems like she disappeared. And he starts remembering like taking this weird drug in high school, and then it like the timelines kind of merge together, and he has like this weird trippy experience where he can basically it lives at all points in his life at the exact same time, so he can kind of like make decisions based on what he knows was going to happen. And it's very interesting, and I love the ending because it has like a very moral ending, like a very like conservative ending even, and I was like, did not expect that. So I really enjoyed it, and I like Dylan O'Brien too. I think he's a really good like star actor, but this was not really a star role. It was more like a subtle role, and he actually did a really good job with it. He had a lot of like that energy that he has, but it was like contained. So
what did you watch it on?
Amazon.
Okay, so it's time travel.
Sort of, yeah. It's not science fiction technically, but I guess it could be science fiction technically, but it's more like a drug trip movie, you know. So it's not like you can say that it is reality, but it is science fiction because it doesn't exist, you know. But it felt like a science fiction, like suspense movie. And number 1
drum roll
is Dune.
Hey!
Of course.
I figured that might come up sometime.
Yeah, for the longest time, this was just the only good movie of the whole year for me, and it's really sad. But yeah, I really liked it. We went to see it in theaters. I think I only went to the theaters twice this year, and that was the second time. And it just was so nice. I love this so much. I liked the adaptation. I know the biggest criticism with everyone is that they ended it in like a bad place, but I thought that they did the best, considering like the circumstances. That was probably the best place to end it because it has a character arc for Paul, and it allows them to stretch it out and make it a little more, like flowy and stuff. And so hopefully the next movie doesn't suffer for that. But I thought that this one was really good. I love the cast. Rebecca Ferguson was like the perfect Lady Jessica of all time. And I was a little wary about Timothée Chalamet, but I don't know why I don't really like him. I do like him. Like, I know that he's a good actor, but I've never really been like into him. And so I was like, he might not be good. And then he was really good. He was, his characterization was really, really on point. And the visuals and like how big everything was. And I was just like watching the walkway come down from the ship in the theater, just like grinning from ear to ear because it was just so nice to look at.
I went inside in the IMAX, and when that scene came on, it was like I was moving and the screen was holding still. I mean, yeah, everything in that movie is so enormous. You can lose perspective. It was great.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I'm done.
All right, that was a good list. Good job, everyone. Who wants? So, anyone want to take the next round? Or?
I want to hear what Lindsay's got.
Okay, just call me out.
We're trapped in a room full of wallflowers.
All right, so my number 10 is, and normally I will say for all the masses watching this video, I know since the rest of the group is going to do it, I worked on doing that too. So number 10, I had The Humans, which is directed by Stephen Karam. And I'm realizing one of my favorite tropes is sort of this guess who's coming to dinner. I love the movies where there's a dinner party and it's like you see this group of people coming together to eat this meal together, and it's kind of awkward. You're not sure why it's awkward, but it is. And so in this case, there's a young couple that has decided to move in together. Their names are Richard and Bridget, and Richard is played by Stephen Yeun, which I love him. And they moved into this crummy basement apartment, and Bridget's family is eating dinner with them on Thanksgiving. And it's based on a play, and they've adapted it for a movie. But what's interesting is the way they've adapted it, they really make a lot of good use of the camera, how they're studying the house, and the apartment is in a state of disarray. So as these different dynamics and conversations are happening with the family, they put focus on the cracks in the wall and where the water's dripping down. And it's just very atmospheric, and each actor has a shiny golden moment of amazing acting. So it's one of those things where nothing's really happening, but it's just all about the dynamics and each of the characters' journeys as they're sharing this meal. So I loved it. It was one of these movies that I have this pile of screeners, and when I looked at it, I was like, what is this? The marketing people didn't do a good job with the cover art at all, but once I watched it, it was great. So that would be number 10.
I was a little confused when I was looking at the IMDb description yesterday. Is there a supernatural element to it or not?
Not really, but it's one of these movies, and I have several of this that are like this, but it's almost filmed like a horror movie. The house itself, the apartment, like I said, it's in a state of disarray, and the apartment almost acts as a character, and makes, you know, you kind of think there might be something more going on, but it's like the house is haunted, but it's not. It's just an old New York apartment. But they use it to sort of emphasize what's going on within the family. And the thing about old, you know, houses is, even though they're old and they're decaying, there's these strong roots that keep it together, and there's kind of that allegory happening throughout the story that I really liked. So number 9 would be Spencer, directed by Pablo Larraín. Have you guys gotten a chance to see that one yet? So it's set over 3 days when Princess Di is celebrating the Christmas holidays with the royal family at Sandringham Estate. If any of you guys have watched The Crown, you'll know that the last season ends with Princess Di and the family at Sandringham. So it's kind of interesting that the movie picks up kind of right at that moment. And it's set, and it's another surreal drama, but Princess Di goes to the house, and there's a lot made of this estate. It kind of opens with the military come in and check everything, and then the cooking staff come in, and they're also equally, it's almost like one army is switched out for another. But it's very suspenseful in that, even, you know, again, it's like they're just trying to eat together. But at the time, as everybody probably knows by now, Princess Di has bulimia, eating disorders. So the family keeps saying, "It's time for sandwiches in the parlor," and then everybody's waiting for you, Diana, and she'll be like, "I'll be there in just one moment." But she never goes to the dinner. So it's about her avoiding being with the family, and you see her with the boys, you see her with Charles, you see her talking to the Queen. So I guess it's another guess who's coming to dinner picture in a way. But again, very well done, shot like a horror movie again, but it ends in this wonderful, uplifting way that is beautiful. I've become a royal family junkie. I didn't start out that way until when it was in 1997, I did study abroad in the UK, and that was right when Princess Diana died. So ever since then, I've gotten a little more obsessed, and I love The Crown, so I highly recommend that one. So number 8 would be The Novice, which is directed by Lauren Hadaway. And this is one I've talked about a lot on Twitter, but it's sort of, the best way I could describe it would be Black Swan meets rowing team at school. It's I would call it a psychological drama about a college girl who decides to try out for her school's rowing team. And she becomes obsessed with being the best person on that team. Not necessarily the best rower ever alive, but she wants to be better than this other girl. And so she starts pushing herself to get better and better, and doing things over break when you're supposed to be on break. But it really shows the visceral damage that rowing can do on the body. And it's just this fascinating study of obsession. And, not obsession to do something in particular, but just obsession with being obsessed. And there are some people that always need a challenge, and that's what this girl represents. And it's a first-time film director, really good. It's made by IFC Films, and hopefully people can. I don't think it got a wide film release, but it's an excellent movie. Did anyone get a chance to watch that one?
I would like to.
really interesting. The other comparison people are making it to is Whiplash.
Ooh.
But again, that guy, you like Whiplash, don't you, Sarah? Yeah. All right, so the number 7 would be Come On, Come On, directed by Mike Mills. This was one I caught at the Film Fest 919. I've seen it twice. It's shot in black and white, stars Joaquin Phoenix, and Woody Norman is the little boy's name. And Joaquin plays this sort of, he's almost like an NPR talk show host, although it's NPR isn't mentioned. But he goes around the world, country, and he interviews little kids about their hopes for the future. But you find out that he's sort of one of these emotionally unavailable people. He's not married, doesn't have any kids, doesn't really have close relationships. And it's almost like the interviewing for him becomes his little substitute for having emotions, because everything's one-sided. He gets to have one-sided intimacy with these people he's interviewing, but they never interview him. And he gets asked by his sister to babysit his nephew while she's taking care of her partner who's bipolar. And so Joaquin is sort of, for the first time, having to take care of someone and being responsible for somebody that, you know, has needs, and he's getting taught what it means to love someone by this little boy that needs him so badly. But the two of them are quite similar. Like, Joaquin is almost like a kid himself. He doesn't understand what it means. He doesn't know how to handle his emotions very well. And so the two of them are in this, I think they call the trope thrown together. So it's about the two of them being thrown together and how they handle that time.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, it's almost very, if you guys are familiar with Terrence Malick, I'm sure, it's very Terrence Malick-ish, because there'll be some dialogue, but then there's just these pretty little vignettes of them doing things, and sometimes there's dialogue on top of that. There's a lot of readings, like they read little books out loud to each other on top of the stuff. I believe it's still in theaters now, so you can catch it. See a movie in the theater.
I'm going to go see Spider-Man tomorrow.
I see it when you said you'd only seen 2 movies, and I was like, what about Spider-Man?
I tried to go see it before, but we couldn't see it.
I know Come On, Come On's playing at my local art house theater in Nashville, but there's a bunch of movies there I haven't had time to go out and see yet. But I feel like contractually obligated to watch a Joaquin Phoenix movie just because I know I'm going to get something out of it.
You should. Just don't see it late, and don't see it when you're drinking, because it'll make you fall asleep. It's very relaxing.
Oh my.
Okay, so 9, 8, 7. So number 6 would be The Green Knight, and I know that all of you guys saw that. Did you see it, Sarah? No. Trevor saw it. Tyler saw it. These guys know.
All right. Let's do opinions.
Okay, so all right. So what do I want to say about The Green Knight? I think pretty much everybody knows what it's about. It's a Christmas movie. Okay, so you've got this young would-be knight that goes to a party, and he gets an opportunity to show his mettle, and he thinks that he's going to be something. So I know that this is a controversial movie in that I think one of the big ways so this is what I'm going to say about it. When I went to see the movie in the theaters, it was totally unexpected. on the one hand, it was expected in that when you see the trailer, you're like, you don't really get a lot of the plot. It's all mood, right? There's this brooding music and there's a head set on fire. You're just like, what's going on? But if you're familiar with the story, it's this, story about chivalry and honor and all that. So when you're approaching this movie, you're thinking, man, that's what the movie's going to be about. It's going to be about this guy's hero's journey. But that ends up being not what it is. And it's almost like the complete opposite. Like you have a character who's making all the mistakes you could possibly make and showing how unimpressive he is. But the way I viewed it was that it's taking this medieval tale and trying and like putting a contemporary, it's like, let's imagine a person who's born in 2021 was taking this journey. How would they interact with this world? And obviously it ends up being a complete disaster. So it's making a lot of points, a lot of good points if you look at the story that way. And it's definitely what do they call it? It's a cautionary tale in many, many ways. So I liked how, but besides all that, I liked how atmospheric it was, and the way that the director was able to cast this mood throughout the story. The soundtrack was amazing.
I did like the soundtrack, for what it's worth.
It was just, inspired a lot of good discussion, and I like movies that get people talking and sort of debating about important issues, and it did that. So I'm open to your thoughts, others who saw it.
I love the idea of the Green Knight, but it lost me at the scene where, well, the woman has his way with our hero, and at that point, I realized that the film was just all downhill from there, and just complete nihilism right until the final seconds of the film. And I'm like, okay, mild uptake, not bad, but it's such a descent into like an awful person that at times that it really lost me at one point. Where I'm curious how seeing a second time would affect it, and I've already done a whole hour-and-a-half podcast just explaining my thoughts on it, because you're right, it is a movie that is designed to bring about interesting conversations, but it is also a movie that is quite alienating at several points, and it pushed a couple of buttons for me too far. So, and I'm sure Trevor's probably, much more vigorous in that than I am. So,
well, I will say I liked the soundtrack. There were scenes, especially the scene with the giants, that were truly wonderful and awesome. Yes, it did maintain its mythic tone throughout, and I liked that. But when I think of the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, it's a story of honor. And it just doesn't seem like anyone behind the camera has a concept of what real courtly honor means. And so, yeah, if it was meant to leave us with more questions than answers and spark discussions, then I guess it succeeds.
I mean, I have thoughts about the movie, but I know that's not really what this podcast is about and what the director was trying to communicate, but I don't really think that that's what we want to talk about right now, so I'm gonna trudge on. But we can have a Twitter discussion later if you want, Trevor. So that would be 9, 8, 7, 6. So we're on number 5. Okay, number 5 is a movie called One for the Road, which is directed by Natawawat Punya. I probably said that name horribly. This is one that I don't believe has gotten a distributor yet, which is a really big shame. So I hope it does soon. So I'm not sure that it's come out yet. It was shown at Sundance. It's a road trip movie that switches halfway through. So these two friends get together, they're childhood friends, and one of them is a bartender, and the other one, I don't remember what his deal is exactly, but you find out that they're estranged and they haven't talked in years. One of them has cancer, the one that's not the bartender. And he asks his friend to go with him on a road trip where he's going to return an item that he has to each of his ex-girlfriends. And he visits each one, returns the item, gets to chat with her. You get halfway through the movie and it switches in a surprising way and becomes about something a lot different. So it's sort of a sweeter, you could call it a sweeter High Fidelity, if you're familiar with of that movie, where the guy's kind of revisiting all of his old girlfriends. And except for instead of music, this one delves a lot more into cocktails and the kind of feelings they can, just like with music, the right drink can like evoke a memory about something. So it's just a feel-good road trip movie, and it's really good. So I hope that it'll be a wide distribution soon. It's in a foreign language, and I don't remember which language it's in now. So number 4 would be Coda, which is directed by Sean Heder and is on Apple TV right now.
The Napoleon Dynamite guy?
No. No. This is S-I-A-N. Is how the name is spelled. Not John. Isn't his name John? Sean.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
Sean. So this is a sweet coming-of-age story about a girl who is the only hearing member of her all-deaf family. And the family is a fisherman family. And so she has her own dream, though, of being a singer. The thing is, nobody's ever heard her sing before because her family's all deaf. And so she gets a chance to kind of find out how good she is. And the family's trying to navigate, they need her to be their translator amongst the townspeople. And so it's like she has this obligation to her family, yet she wants to strike out on her own path at the same time. And this was a Sundance premiere, and when I heard of the concept, I was like, well, this sounds like a sweet coming-of-age story, which it is. But it's really well done, and it's not like a teen special, it's really well done. And I cried multiple times while watching this movie. I watched it again this week, and I cried again. Like, I couldn't help it. The father, her parents are so good and expressive. I actually nominated Troy Kutzer and Marlee Matlin. Marlee Matlin was on Seinfeld at one point. She's the deaf actress. Yeah, they're just fantastic, and so it's a really good movie. Have any of you guys seen it?
I almost got Apple TV just to watch it.
I saw trailers for it, but the premise made it sound like a really obvious version of like a "you don't understand me" kind of story.
This is like with the Zoom rooms. People are in different places now, so your video is gonna be like super awkward. Like all of a sudden, Sarah and Trevor are gonna switch spaces.
All in the same place for me.
Don't question the spaces. We make it work.
Is everyone still awake? Oh, we just switched positions.
I'm cutting all of this out in the edit. So.
Okay. Okay, so number 3 I have is Mass, which is directed by Fran Kranz.
This is my number 6.
Awesome. So you've got 4 people gathered in a room to have a discussion that all of them have agreed to, but none of them really want to have, just because it's super sensitive. This is one of those movies you really can't say much about if you want it to be effective, because it's, that's how I feel about it. But it's about a conversation. You've got these great performances. It's a very small ensemble, and it's just got a lot of stuff to say about forgiveness and redemption. What do you want to say about it, Tyler?
I mean, do you mind if I say what it's about without saying how it's about it? Because it's kind of, I kind of knew what the premise was without actually knowing how I was going to do it. And I thought it still worked really well.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, it's your show, so you can say what you want. I will say that for me, I just heard about the movie. Somebody said it's really good, and so for me, like when it's in the trailer. They kind of drop something, a pretty big spoiler that they drop, But for me, it was like, whoa! I didn't expect that.
There's about 40 minutes of apprehensive small talk, and it spends so much time just dancing around the issue until they ultimately reveal it's about a school shooting. And when the hammer finally does drop, it just keeps going. Like, it is an extremely tense character piece, and I think it really does. 4 people in the back room of an Episcopalian church, and it's extremely riveting once that hammer drops, and once the apprehension is out, and once these characters are starting to air their grievances, it really kind of hits it hits a stride, and it just keeps going, and it keeps digging deeper. And I thought it was a very well done story, and it didn't fall into a lot of the political, cheap shots I thought it could have done. Like, there could have been a half-hour discussion about gun control and a half-hour discussion about, all these, stupid topical political subjects, and the movie just skates by them very effortlessly and says, "This isn't what this movie's about. We're not going to go down this path and just let you two scream at each other about politics." Like, the characters say that in the movie, which I really appreciate. This is about characters working through their psychology, and I thought that was it's brilliant. Like, this could work as a stage play, but it's the way the director does it. It's very well handled. It feels larger than it is.
Yeah, I would say that the idea that them all being there, I don't know why the volume is super loud sometimes, but the idea of them being there is they all want to move forward and heal, but they're all stuck in some way on what happened. So they're all trying to move forward, but each of them are kind of coming at it from a slightly different viewpoint. And I've heard an interesting take I heard was that each of them represents one of the stages of grief, and they're stuck in one of those stages, but they all kind of need each other to move forward, because you have to experience all those stages before you can move forward, and each of them are stuck in one. So but yeah, Sarah, Trevor, did you guys see this one yet?
I haven't. I do like Frank Krantz, though, as an actor. I guess he's never directed before, right? So I wanted to see it just because he directed it, and I thought that would be cool.
Yeah, and he's affiliated with Cabin in the Woods or something?
Yeah, well, he's the best character in Cabin in the Woods. Oh. Yeah, but he's just like a really good comic actor, so I was really surprised that he was doing such like a dramatic movie, so it sounded really interesting.
He's going to get offered the directing chair of Spider-Man 4 in the next couple of weeks, so that's how this works now. So.
All right, so number 2 is the infamous Pig.
Yes.
Directed by Michael Sarnowski. And this was a total shocker of a film. Even though you knew, everybody was making jokes going into it, that it was John Wick with a pig. And you're kind of thinking, is it? Going into it. And then the reviews start coming in. I think I got an early screener of this one. And I will say, I am a Nicolas Cage completionist. I see anything that man is in. So I was going to see it either way. But I loved how this let you see a quieter, more nuanced side of Cage. And, the concept being, he has this truffle pig that was stolen, and he's trying to track that down. But I would say there are 2 mysteries in this movie. The first mystery is, where is the truffle pig? The second being, who is Rob, who's, the Nicolas Cage character, and why is he in the woods with this pig by himself? And both of those mysteries are explored and solved by the end of the film, and you just see this at the same time as this seedy underground of chefs. And it's really good, and a lot of people were really surprised by the movie, usually in good ways. But what did you think, Trevor?
I thought it was tonally uneven. I really liked the first act, and it kind of started to lose me in the second act. The whole underground chef fight club thing seemed to be from a totally different movie. And by the time that I don't want to give spoilers, but by the end of the second act, when he starts to find out what happened to the pig, I just felt like the movie really stumbled and never quite recovered. However, this is my number 9 movie in my top 10. Sonny Bunch's review kind of helped to see it in a different light. I'm still not convinced that Rob has any sort of character arc. I don't really know that anyone in this movie grew or changed. I'm not even, And so I found that to be disappointing.
What about Alex? What about the Alex Wolff character? He didn't change?
He was the only one, but he wasn't the protagonist.
I would say that Nicolas Cage's character arc is about learning to take the first steps in grieving. Because as everything that ultimately gets revealed in that film is about revealing that he's about how deeply emotionally stunted he is as a character, and by the end he just no longer has the option of just not grieving the way he was, through the entire film up to that point. So even just taking those small steps is, character progression.
It's sort of like Land with a truffle pig.
This year is a flat circle of films. It's just the same film over and over again. And I'll say, you thought Mass was a film that you want to go in blind to. Pig is. I think Pig benefits from going blind into it more, because that film takes at least 5 left turns and it doesn't stop. So, especially by the end, you think you're getting John Wick with a pig, but it goes in so many crazy directions. And one of the funny things I've heard is that it's apparently very accurately depicting just how seedy the food industry in Portland is. Apparently almost all of it, the things that we see, are real things that exist in Portland. So,
including the Chef Fight Club?
Yeah. Including the incredibly gentrified truffle industry, for the boutique truffle industry.
Well, I agree with Trevor about the character development on it. It seemed like to me that Nick Cage's character, like, he goes through the whole movie without developing, but then at the end he has a little bit of development right at the end, you know?
What's the moral, though?
And Alex Wolff's character was going through the movie like he was gonna develop, but then he didn't at the end. So they were both disappointing in opposite ways. That's why I didn't like it.
Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, my headset has stopped working, but
I know.
as long as you guys can hear me coming through, I guess we'll be okay. I'm on my last one. So my last movie is called 9 Days, and it's directed by Edson Oda. And this is an existentialist, high-concept fantasy about an unknown realm between heaven and earth. And there are these men and women, one of them being Winston Duke, who takes on the role of almost this bureaucrat. And so what he does is he chooses which souls get to go to Earth and experience life as a human. And his favorite subject, whose name is Angela, dies. And so he has to replace her, and he interviews all these men and women for this vacancy. So at the same time, he's trying to figure out what happened to Angela and why she ended up, you find out she killed, well, there's a question, did she kill herself or not? And so he's also trying to figure out why this person that he thought he picked her. Why did she kill herself if she did? And so he's trying to solve this mystery. And it's just this very well acted, again, a first time film director. It has everything in it, life, death, love, passion, and like, what does it mean to be a human, and what does it mean to survive life on Earth? So it had a lot of these high concept things in it, but the acting is wonderful, and Winston Duke delivers a monologue at the end you will never forget.
When you suggested this one on Twitter, though, that one was like the most interesting one for me. I was like, oh, this looks so cool. But then, it wasn't anywhere that I could stream, so I'll see it someday.
Any more thoughts, or do we want to sacrifice Trevor now?
Oh, I'm done.
All right, Trevor, you're out of excuses now. Let's hear your list.
All right, I'm in the hot seat. And I'm afraid that I don't have a lot of thoughtful, intelligent art house films in my list.
Yay.
So, starting things off appropriately with number 10, I've got No Time to Die. My preference in a movie is that it have beautiful people in exotic locations doing exciting things. And I don't think that another movie I saw this year did that as well as the most recent James Bond. It's not the best James Bond movie. I think that if it had been any other franchise or a standalone film, I think it would have been more of a revelation, whereas this kind of seemed to be playing catch up with a lot of other action franchises. But I still enjoyed it. It looks good. The cinematography is really nice to look at. Some of the set pieces were great, so I had a good time with it. Even more than Fast and Furious 9, which didn't make my top 10, believe it or not. At Number 9, I've got Pig. We've already talked about that. Like Sarah, I was cramming movies this week, so I saw 2 yesterday, and I started yesterday morning with Val, the Val Kilmer documentary. Have you guys had a chance to see that?
Not yet. I've been hearing a lot of good things about that, though.
It's interesting. I didn't realize just how poor his health is right now, but he's still a very charismatic man. I guess what kind of troubled me about the movie was just, is it better to die in private? We've got so many of our legends who are doing these documentaries or dying before our very eyes. I think it kind of started with Johnny Cash 20 odd years ago, and Glenn Campbell, and now Val. And I have very mixed feelings about that. I almost wonder if these sorts of things should be held on to until after the legend has passed away. But it's still a very engaging, uplifting documentary that could have become maudlin. At number 8, I've got Blue Collar John Wick, Nobody. It's fun. I like to imagine that it takes place in the John Wick universe, and so somewhere down the line, these two characters could run into each other and team up. If you get a chance to see it, Christopher Lloyd is fantastic. He's still got it. He steals every scene he's in. The thing that bugs me most about Nobody is it's got a great soundtrack, and they completely butcher the songs to make them fit the scene. So if you know the music, that's not how those songs go.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean they cut out sections of verses to get to the chorus faster, or they skip verses. It's weird, but if you're really familiar with the songs that they use, then you can tell that things are missing, no matter how slickly edited it was.
What kind of songs is it? Was it like classic music?
It's easy listening standards. So your Sinatra's,
yeah,
and probably some early 70s stuff. I mean, the sorts of things that are age appropriate to the main character. Was it Bob Odenkirk?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, anyway.
Better Call Saul.
Yes.
Nobody really seemed to hit like a nerve this year. I know a lot of people that really, really got into that.
Number 6, I went with Wrath of Man.
Liked it.
It's a movie.
I don't think that it's as clever as The Gentleman, and I think maybe that's why I liked it more. It's also not quite as crass as The Gentleman. So I thought it was, just the right balance of Guy Ritchie silliness without getting too puerile. So, and Jason Statham was always fun.
It wasn't really silly, was it? It was pretty brooding and bleak.
Especially the ending.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I guess silliness is the wrong word. It's slick. And stylized. But yeah, not silly like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I still want a sequel to that. But that's That's another story for another time.
It's your quintessential Jason Statham movie with all the baggage that comes with, and a lot of meat-headed dumbness, but it's fun. So,
And a rare Josh Hartnett sighting.
Yes. Isn't he going to be in Guy Ritchie's next one as well?
I don't know. I haven't seen him in anything in forever. So.
I think Guy Ritchie is committed to resurrecting that guy's career. At number 5, I've got Cry Macho.
Good pick.
I wasn't really sure who the movie is made for.
Eastwood, clearly.
I mean, it's too rough to be a Hallmark movie, and it's too saccharine and slow for anyone else. I guess it was just made for the hardcore Clint Eastwood fans. I watched it with my mom, and it was fine. I thought it was interesting seeing Eastwood, the quintessential tough guy, basically come around and say, being macho is ultimately meaningless. And I don't think that there's another actor in Hollywood who could do that. Maybe Sylvester Stallone, which it's funny because the movie's Cry Macho is a lot like Rambo Last Blood, if you want to look at it that way.
Cry Macho was Rambo Last Blood with any amount of heart or conscience or brain.
Yes.
But it's also a movie that's horribly miscast, in the sense that it's a movie that's meant for like a 50, 60-year-old, and Eastwood is 95. So it's just like, okay, this guy cannot possibly do any of the things the script is calling for, except for the fact that it's frigging Clint Eastwood and he's still alive. So we're just gonna let him do whatever he wants.
What do you think about it, Trevor? Because you're not really explaining why it's in your top 10.
It's artistic, and maybe it's just because no one else but Clint Eastwood could have filled those boots. I think it's a sweet love story. I just wish that Eastwood had been able to make this movie maybe 20 years younger. But I think it's thoughtful, and I think it has some good things to say, or leaves us with some good questions about masculinity and real strength from a perspective of age and infirmity. The place that we all end up. And so, not perfect, but thoughtful and hopeful.
That seems to be the topic of a lot of Eastwood's late period films. The Mule was very much kind of the same, meditation on that. Although I think that movie probably did it more interestingly, but this movie was also probably a little bit more emotionally resonant. So I guess it's one flaw over another flaw.
Yeah. Tyler, I think your microphone is getting weaker as we go on.
You think so? Maybe I'm just getting quieter. I don't know. I'm getting less aggressive, or it's the beer. I don't know. It could be one of those two things.
And number 4, I've got Those Who Wish Me Dead with Angelina Jolie. Kind of like the Tomorrow War. It felt like a real 90s throwback, and I think we're going to see a lot more movies like this down the line. But I thought that everyone really gave their all in that movie. I I thought that, even the kid was good. I've met women like Angelina Jolie's character, so I bought her. She didn't seem uber feminist. She seemed pretty grounded to me. Did any of you bother to watch it?
I saw it. It was like, I liked it, but then I didn't think it was very good. And then now that it's like settled in, I like respect it a lot. Like whenever you're talking about it, I agree with everything you're saying, But then I'm just like, oh, I just didn't like it as much, I guess.
Who was the name of the screenwriter on that film?
What?
What was the name of the screenwriter on that film?
Wasn't it Taylor Sheridan?
Yeah.
I like Taylor Sheridan's older stuff, but I've been getting really kind of iffy about it in recent years, just because Wind River was well directed, but Sicario 2 was really meh. Without Remorse was really bad, so I just kind of stopped giving him the time of day. So if this is worth going back, giving him another chance with, I'll give it a shot. But I kind of just stopped giving him a chance after about the last couple films.
I felt like it was really the best of this new trend I'm seeing in movies right now, where they are moving back towards the mid-budget dramas, action drama, suspense films. So I would put this in the same category as Let Him Go and The Little Things. It's the sort of thing that you would find on Sunday afternoon flipping through cable channels. It would fit right in with that. And so maybe it ranks so highly just because it's got that sort of nostalgia comfort factor to it. It really feels like a movie from a better era. So even if it's not that great, it clicked with me on that level. Number 3, I've got, was someone going to say something else about that? No. Okay. Number 3, A Quiet Place Part 2. We've hashed that one out. Number 2, I've put Dune. And my number 1, which no one has brought up yet, Nightmare Alley.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Tyler, did you get a chance to see that, or did Spider-Man push it out?
No, I saw it a few days ago. I have a tradition of seeing every Guillermo del Toro film when it comes out with my best friends since the 3rd grade. So when I was up in Chicago this past weekend, I saw it, but I did see it after Spider-Man, so I didn't help the opening weekend gross, unfortunately. But I loved it. It was very good. It's on my list too.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I struggled with it as I was watching it, and then this was one that I saw for the banner, and so spending the next couple of days working on my review and thinking about it more, the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. It's definitely a but there for the grace of God go I story, and I think that it's beautifully done. The cinematography is stunning. The set design.
It's your classic.
Yeah, I liked it.
It's your classic nihilist noir film about a character who is just unrepentantly evil and awful, who's just digging his own grave deeper every single decision he makes. It's like The Green Knight, except you just know every step of the way that this guy is just unrepentantly awful, and you hate him, but he's so compelling as a person because he's so charismatic and so his ability to control the room just makes it engrossing. I think that's kind of why Del Toro won the role in the first place. I think he wanted to do a movie about people who are controlling and manipulative, because what lefty filmmaker is going to pass an option to do a film like that circa 2018 for some reason? Who would imagine what that theme could possibly mean? I can't put my finger on it.
I watched the first half. It was so long, and I need to finish it because it was nominated for Best Cinematography with my group. But I thought it was a good story. I just was for me, it was very cognizant of how long the movie was. I was like, this is dragging for me. And it was interesting that you had the first part of the story, takes place when he's learning how to do this mind reading trick, and I thought that was going to be the movie because they spent so much time on it, and then it turns into this other storyline. So I thought it was interesting how much time they spent in that, premiere or kind of the prologue or whatever. You would think maybe they would give that one chapter, and they could have devoted more time without it being so long. So I thought that I'm still not clear why they spent so much time in this earlier story time. And obviously I need to finish it. Maybe that all will be revealed, but I feel like it could have used from my half 50% of watch. I think it could have used an edit.
I mean, the film cuts pretty evenly down, like right down the middle of the first half is him kind of learning his trade, and the second half is him taking it too far. So it's the through line is that it's a film about the ability to manipulate people, and the second half just does it in a different way, and it just kind of takes it in a more classically noir direction once he kind of develops the ability to do that.
But yeah, I think Del Toro was definitely reluctant to leave the circus.
Oh, he loved that freak show. He was not giving that up.
I mean, I thought the circus part as a story was really good. And
they could do a whole movie.
You could have made like it could have been a mini-series, part 1, part 2.
Del Toro could have made that happen.
Did any of y'all see the old one from the 40s?
Not yet. No. I did pick up a Criterion of it, though, because I wanted to watch it. So now that I've seen it, I really want to go back and watch that when I have some time.
I watched that one instead of this one, basically, because I'm not going to get to see it until it comes out of theaters, probably. But I'm really excited to see it, and especially after seeing the old one, because I feel like it's like a good story for Del Toro.
Oh.
So I'm really excited to see it.
The only thing I thought was excessive was that Del Toro adds his classic Del Toro violence into it. And it's not as excessive as some of his previous outings. There's no finger-crushing scene like in Shape of Water, but there's definitely a few moments that he could have cut out had he had any sort of inclination or limitations at all. But it is a good Del Toro movie. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Fun fact, it's based on a novel written by C.S. Lewis's wife's ex-husband.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh. That's...
that is a fun fact.
Good Lord.
Yeah, wrap your head around that one.
Hold on, I need to take a dive real quick.
Maybe that's why they got divorced.
How are there C.S. Lewis facts I don't know? Good Lord.
So yeah, that's my top 10.
All right, I guess that leaves me, the poor soul that has neck on the line yet. So I guess just to start out with, I kind of agonized over my number 10. So I did my yearly list, and I realized that there was a lot of stuff I kind of wanted to throw at the bottom of the list. That my number 1 through 8 kind of sorted themselves out, just because I thought those were the movies that were consistently good and consistently, actually kind of trying for something more interesting and more ambitious. And a lot of them were from established, bigger directors, like the ones I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. But that number 10 spot, I really agonized over that. At one point, I wanted to put The Most Reluctant Convert on there. That didn't make it. I really wanted to put Run, Hide, Fight on there because I liked that a lot, but that didn't quite make it. I liked Annette. I liked The Roadrunner, the Anthony Bourdain documentary. I liked Tick Tick Boom. I considered throwing Malignant on there, just despite being an absolutely awful movie. It has the best trashy slasher villain of any film in years. But I ultimately settled on a very, very small indie drama that I saw earlier this year through I think the Pan-African Film Festival online. It was called Voodoo Macbeth, which I don't know if anyone has heard of it, but it is a UCLA student film with like 20 directing and directing and writing credits about the first stage play that Orson Welles put on in New York, which was a play called Voodoo Macbeth, which was an all-black production of Macbeth set in Haiti, and it was a very famous historical event, circa 1930s, theater, and the movie is explicitly well done as far as student films go. I did not believe that there were this many directing credits on it, because it did not feel like a film that was scattershot and thought up by committee. It felt like this was someone who had a lot of expertise bringing to bear on this particular historical event, and they did an incredible job with it. And I hope it gets some sort of wide release soon, because I haven't seen it get any sort of attention since. But as someone who's an Orson Welles fanboy, like, this is like something you kind of need to watch. It is part of the lore of Orson Welles as much as anything else is. I have any of you even heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Even Lindsay, like the person who sees everything. I managed to find something to shock her with.
I have not seen everything, but I was curious when you started talking about that, if you've seen the movie. I'm trying to find the title now and I can't, but it's a movie that had Vincent D'Onofrio playing Orson Welles.
RKO 281.
What?
Is it RKO 281?
No, this is when Orson Welles was doing plays, and it has, I think, is it Tobey Maguire's in it as like a young?
Are you thinking of Me and Orson Welles?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's a really good companion piece to that, because that was about his second play in New York. Although it's a Zac Efron, I think. That's my only. I like that movie, but that's my only problem with it, is that it's part of this that weird genre of like biopics where the screenwriter writes himself as a character dialoguing with the famous person he wants to interact with, kind of like End of the Tour or something like that, where it's like, here's this super interesting person that's a very famous writer, and here's this guy who's clearly a self-insert of me. So, good movie, but very
Okay.
Early 2000s.
I just wondered if this the play you're talking about was featured in that movie at all.
No, Voodoo Macbeth was based on Macbeth, and the one they did in Me and Orson Welles was the fascist remake of Julius Caesar. So,
okay.
Which was the other really huge Shakespeare production he did in the 1930s. Welles liked to do big, showy, Shakespeare adaptations, but with a twist. And they always drew huge audiences in because it was freaking Orson Welles, and he was going to do something brilliant with it, and everyone loved it. If you were a New York Broadway snob who wants to go see super lefty adaptations of Shakespeare, which nowadays you'd kill for any sort of footage of it just because there are such historical moments. But anyway, the number 9 for me. I went with Dune, which,
So low.
Well, my thoughts on when Dune came out, my thoughts on it were somewhat more negative than most. Only on the contingent fact that I said, if this film does not get a sequel, it'll essentially be a failure as a film, because it did not have the ending it needed and it doesn't feel complete. Now that we for sure have a sequel coming out in a year and a half, I'm willing to give it the proper spot it deserves. It is as perfect of an adaptation of Dune as we're ever going to get. It is the best blockbuster action film we got this year. It's visually perfect. I'm not going to complain about it anymore. We're going to get the ending I want, so I can't reasonably complain about it anymore. So yeah, it made the list. I recant most of my more serious objections, and I'm willing to just join the crowd on this and be pro Dune. So number 8 is Last Night in Soho, which is the new Edgar Wright film, which I was weirdly on the upper side of in terms of reviews. This one got pretty badly review bombed. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but there was a lot of critics that really went against it for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Was it just because it was a horror movie when they didn't want it to be?
No, I mean, I'd have to go back and review what exactly their criticism was, but a lot of the big film critic websites went after it just as like his weak as well. It's probably his weakest film to date in a lot of ways, but it's still an Edgar Wright film, so it's amazingly shot. It's got this amazing story. The ending builds up to is very well done. Its characterization for I forget the actress's name, but it's handled very well. She's a very innocent character who just kind of gets strung by on this very dark, journey into the soul. And I thought it's an Edgar Wright film. It's his weakest film is still something precious and something that we're going to be studying 100 years from now. And I didn't get why so many people were just, out for blood on this one. Let me see if I can pull up. I think like Roger Ebert's website ripped it apart.
I'll tell you, I had to look up what I thought about it. So this is my example of something seeming very uneven, because the trailers made you think it was this highbrow psychological suspense, and I feel like in the end, so the first half of the movie was almost like a gotcha film with lots of jump scares. It felt like part of a Scream franchise, so it switched halfway with me where they were like, just the way the plot, it just became very predictable at the end. I liked the first half and thought the second half fell pretty flat for me.
I'll give the criticism that the ghosts don't work very well as like a screen presence, because they are very obvious and they are just kind of, it never feels subtle the way they're used. But I thought in the way they function as like a story function, it was fine, because it's a movie ultimately about a character coming to some sort of realization about herself and the life she lives. And the ultimate realization isn't that shocking, but I thought it works, especially in, thematically and what it's going for as a story about like intergenerational trauma and sexual violence and, overcoming one's, innocence and creating a stronger sense of the world and going through a journey, going through what's it called? Like the young adult story, the journey to becoming an adult. I thought it worked on all the points where this particular story needed to, even though I will admit elements of it didn't necessarily work on arrival, but I didn't think it deserved the walloping it got. I mean, RogerEbert.com gave it 1.5 stars out of 5. Like, there's some big names that didn't like this film. I didn't get it, but I'd go to bat for it. I liked it a lot. There you go. So number 7, I'm with Trevor. It's Nightmare Alley, which would have gotten a little higher, but it's like I said, it's Guillermo del Toro's eccentricities. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's uneven, but it's a film that it feels like a Del Toro film in all of its impulses. So even though I think the actual plot works very perfectly, it could have been, toned down in a couple of areas and maybe been better for it. But it's a great film. I'm gonna watch it again. I'm the last person in the world to criticize a movie that's original and that's, kind of weighty and beautiful to look at. 6 is Mass, as with Lindsey Dunn. I very much agree that this is one of the best films this year and it deserves its spot. We already talked about that. And number 5 is a film I don't know a lot of people have watched, but it has probably the best premise of any film I've seen this year. So it's a movie called The Vigil. Has anyone seen The Vigil?
Yes.
Someone's seen The Vigil!
Yes.
Lindsay, have you seen The Vigil?
I'm looking it up. I think so.
I guess it didn't make much of an impression.
I mean, I absolutely love this film.
No. This is directed by Keith Thomas.
It released earlier this year. I don't remember the director's name, but it was a horror movie, so.
Is it about the Orthodox Jewish community?
Yes.
Oh, I've heard of that.
So yeah,
Okay, I did not.
the premise is essentially it's your classic exorcism story, but instead of being rooted in, Catholic Christian mysticism, it's rooted in Orthodox Jewish mysticism. So it brings a completely different cultural commentary and background and set of, a viewpoint of the world than a lot of the exorcism movies we got. And it ends up being this amazing little story about intergenerational trauma and overcoming, the things that haunt you. And obviously that has a lot of resonance in, the cultural sense of the Jewish identity, because they still have a lot of, bad things that have happened in the last century that, that YouTube's algorithms probably wouldn't like me mentioning. But there's a lot of trauma bound up in that identity, and this movie is about kind of unpacking that in the style of a Exorcist style horror movie. And the way it's executed, it almost pushes the gore a little too far, but it's never blood spurting. It's just a lot of scenes of characters having their bones snapped and arms twisted in uncomfortable ways, but they always revert in weird ways. Oh, my arm, it just turned 180 degrees in the wrong direction and now it's normal again somehow. But there's a lot of scenes like that that are just cringe horror, but just as a movie about being haunted by something in your past, it's an amazing experience. Mostly told in just one location over the course of one night, but it really pays off in a way that's affecting. The final shot I still have burned in my head. It is a great horror movie that I wish more people had seen, because it's gonna be one of those ones that I hope people discover in time, because it's very well done.
And it's really creative in the way that it works in modern technology. A lot of horror movies, I think, would struggle to get by in a world where we're so interconnected with, being able to text and video chat and just communicate so easily. And The Vigil doesn't just, accommodate our technology, it uses it really effectively. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I think there was a text exchange that was just creepy as all get out, and so it's very creative. I keep repeating myself. It's very creative. It works within its world very well.
Yeah, there's a lot of stomach sinking moments where you realize, oh no, it's going that way. Oh no, oh no, oh no. It just takes that pit as deep as possible before finally kind of relieving it. It is a great journey to go on. So number 4 is a movie by all rights I probably should not have on my list, but I'm going to do it because I am one of the last 10 people that is a Steven Spielberg fan this late into his career. But West Side Story, even though I'm sure that's going to piss off a lot of people, but I will give
not me, because I didn't see it.
Oh yeah, I mean, for all of its pretentious preening about gentrification and racial stuff, it's this is late period Spielberg is making movies that are so unimaginably good that I'm willing to put up with a lot of crap. I'm willing to put up with a crappy drama about how important the Washington Post is, or a movie about how it's okay to defend communists because being a good person is important. I'm willing to put it up because he is such an amazing drama director at this stage in his career that I can put up with a lot. And I don't know if you guys have seen Bridge of Spies or some of his recent ones, but they are so good, and I'm willing to put up with a lot of it. And West Side Story, for a guy that hasn't really done musicals all that well in his career up until this point, this is a really good, epic, big budget musical. Like, we don't get this kind of thing anymore. Nowadays, when you get a musical, it's, in the heights, mid-budget, kind of trying to be deeper than it is, trying to be interesting, or it's like La La Land, or it's a lot of, well done, but music's not great. This is like the whole package. Like, this is like the kind of musical that Hollywood's never going to make again. And it's fairly loyal to the original story. So even if there are elements that are kind of annoying and stupid and woke, as the kids say, I'm willing to put up with it just because it is very, very well done. Has anyone else seen it, or am I the only one? Hey, Lindsay!
I've seen it.
What do you think?
What do I think? Well, I'm a big fan of the original, so I liked it fine, but it's like I'm very attached to the original, so it's hard to see anybody else playing those roles, especially Riff. The original Riff is like one of my huge crushes. So I was like, this guy cannot compare. I mean, but it was well done, and I liked, it was a fun theatrical experience. There were people in the theater clapping, and I guess I was there with a bunch of musical theater nerds or something, because everybody kept clapping and yelling every time Ariana DeBose came on. I didn't know she was from Raleigh, so I guess she's from this area. But it was well done and fun, and it got the crowd excited. So you have to say that for it. And it was Spielberg. It was directed well. It's just hard for me I just wonder why it needed to be made.
It got made because Spielberg wanted to make it, so that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the reason to make it, but I understand that response. 3 is one I haven't heard yet, but I'm going to give The Last Duel a spot, which, it's part of a weird trend I saw this year with, which I call anti-medievalism movies. I mean, we got this, you got The Green Knight, and you got Paul Verhoeven's Benedetta, which I am not shocked did not make it onto any list tonight, but it was weird seeing 3 separate films that are ultimately about how much the Middle Ages sucked, which I take that to mean something, even if these 3 directors are so completely detached from each other artistically that there's no way that's like, this isn't collusion. This is just different people from walks of life coming to the same agreements, which is weird, but of the 3, I like this one the most. Great performances by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. It brought back some of that old school gladiator energy that Ridley Scott's so great for. I just appreciated this as, one of Scott's best late period films, the kind of thing we're going to miss when he actually does eventually pass away. So I gave this one a pretty high mark. Did anyone else see it, or? Because I don't think anyone saw it, except for you and me, apparently.
I saw it. I agree with you. It seemed like another movie made from a different time, like the time when we had movies like Braveheart. It was this very elaborate period drama. I think it was well made, well acted. I thought it was pretty hard to sit through. One of the things that's really hard for me to sit through is sexual assault, and seeing a sexual assault happen twice in one movie is a lot. But I know a lot of people, a lot of critics are really vying for this one to win some, especially in the acting categories. For people really like Ben Affleck as his role. Yeah, I've heard he's compared to Prince John from the animated Robin Hood.
He's so smarmy, it's great. Number 2 for me is The French Dispatch, which I haven't heard much yet tonight, but I wanted to give it a good position because it's Wes Wes Anderson, for all of his twee inclinations, he is still one of our best screenwriters, and this is probably his best film since The Grand Budapest Hotel. And at times I thought it was a little bit supercilious. I mean, it's a movie about journalism coming out, after the last 5 years, so it's definitely, it's got the politics stink on it. But, for what it is being an anthology film with this huge cast of Wes Anderson regulars, it's wonderful from beginning, middle, and end, and there's so many great little moments of just really deep humor and really deep sadness that just where he'll say one thing and suddenly there's this hugely dark realization about what that means, and there's so much to it that I probably won't be able to speak everything to it until I see it again, but I thoroughly enjoyed it on the first watch, and I recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. Did you see it, Lindsay?
Yeah.
Did you see it, Trevor?
No.
It's getting predictable.
He's one of the few directors that can make me feel dumb.
Oh man, I
can't possibly keep up with the screenplay. They mailed me a copy of the screenplay.
Oh.
But it's like, the rapid fire talking. I can't process what happened. It's like, I know I'm supposed to laugh because everybody else is laughing, but I feel so dumb because I'm like, what did he just say? I need to watch it with captions. That's what I need to do.
Well, this is going to be a movie that benefits from being watched multiple times because you're going to see everything. You're going to see the layers new every single time you watch it. Like, I think this is going to age very well as far as Wes Anderson's films go. I can't wait to actually get a copy of it and just start watching it again. But I guess just to kind of end it out, I gave number 1 to Pig. I don't know what to say, but I mean, after what it of all the films that came out this year, this felt like the most original and the most comprehensively interesting beginning to end. I don't know if that'll stay the case come a month from now when some of the other big films have come out. I mean, we have a Coen Brothers and a Paul Thomas Anderson movie coming out in the next week, so I have no idea how my list is going to shake out as things go on. But I'm willing to go to bat for Pig as the most original film this year, and especially as a film that's a directorial debut. I'm willing to go to bat for something that's this good right out the bat. Like this, the guy who made it, he's going to go places. I cannot wait to see what he does after this. But yeah, I mean, we are rapidly approaching the end of our second hour, and Google Hangouts is going to violently throw us off in a moment. But I guess have any other thoughts about the rest of the year and any movies that I almost thought I'd ask, is there any movie this year that you thought deserved the worst title of the year?
Mortal Kombat.
That's fair. What about Trevor, Lindsay? What film offhand is the one that bothered you the most this year?
The movie that bothered me the most was a movie called You're Hired. That was a movie that the director reached out to me and asked me to review, and I felt so bad because I was the only person that reviewed his movie on IMDb, and I gave him like a 1.5 star. But it was supposed to be like a satire on racism and political correctness in the workplace, and it was just horrible and tone deaf and wasn't funny at all. I mean, it was crappily made, which I expected because it was very low budget, but it felt like two middle schoolers making a movie, and there was a really bad joke about police brutality in the middle that was like, why would you put that in there and think it's funny? But
All right, we're out of time, so I'm sorry to cut you off, Trevor, before you can say your worst, but I'm gonna put
Redemption Day.
There you go. All your links are gonna be in the dump below, so everyone go follow them on Twitter and go follow all their blogs. I appreciate being able to talk to you all again, and I hope everyone has a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
The AntiSocial Network is a Groupthink Productions podcast. Editing, producing, and hosting are by Tyler Hummel, artwork by Crystal Calley, and original music was composed by Melissa LaFira and the late Dan Smolla. Like, subscribe, and please let us know what you think about the show in the comments below if you'd like to see anyone interesting be a guest on the show. Thank you for listening.